This is Optimal Startup Daily, episode 411. Just because nobody is doing it is not a reason to launch. And honesty makes you stronger, both by Dr. Jeff Cornwall of drjeffcornwall.com. And I'm Dan, I am your host, and welcome to Optimal Startup Daily. This is the podcast where I read to you from some of the best blogs on entrepreneurship. And today I'm going to share two shorter posts with you. So with that, let's get right to them as we start optimizing your life. Just because nobody is doing it is not a reason to launch, by Dr. Jeff Cornwall of drjeffcornwall.com. I've got a great idea for a business. I know it will work because nobody's doing it. I need to move quickly before someone else does it first. As someone who works with entrepreneurs for a living and hears a lot of business ideas, this type of business pitch puts up a big red flag for me. Just because nobody has started a particular type of business is by no means an indication that the market needs that type of business. When starting a new business, it's always best to start with a clear and compelling need in the market, not with a great idea for some product or service for which there may or may not be customers ready to purchase. In many ways, starting a business that already has competitors in the market can actually be an advantage. That is why businesses tend to cluster together. Where's a good place to start a new gas station? On a corner that already has 3 gas stations. People already go to that location to buy their gas. Where is a good place to start a restaurant? In an area with other restaurants where people are already going when they want to dine out. By pursuing a strategy of going into an existing market, your goal is to do things better, faster, and/or cheaper. So being visible with the competition so the market can see that you offer advantages helps bring in customers. When you start a business based on a completely new idea, attracting customers is a costly and time-consuming process. First, you will need to educate the market about what your product or service is and the benefits it offers. This will generally require extensive advertising, which can be quite expensive. And if you try to do it without advertising, you are faced with a long, slow process of building word of mouth. Either way, you will need to have a substantial budget. Next, once you have the attention of the market, you need to convince people that they actually have a need for your product or service. And again, it will take time and money to accomplish this. A great example of all this comes from the .com era. Pets.com argued to investors that they had come up with a great idea. They were going to sell pet food over the internet. Nobody else was doing it, so with an aggressive advertising budget, they could capture and dominate this market. They convinced investors and ran very expensive ads for their new concept during the Super Bowl. The company and its investors soon found out that there were 2 very important reasons nobody was selling pet food over the internet. First, nobody wants to buy dog food over the internet, as it tends to be an impulse item. Hey, we're out of dog food, so we better go pick some up. And second, it ended up being just too expensive to ship big, bulky bags one at a time to each customer's home. Pets.com soon failed. So, if you discover a business idea that nobody else is doing, take your time, do the research, and test the business model to make sure it really is a viable business. Now, I have another post from Dr. Jeff coming up in just a sec, but first, working at a startup is unimaginably hard, but having one spot to organize everything and work as a team makes it much easier. All your notes, documents, projects, processes, and tasks. Don't you wish there was a way to pull them all together? Notion is an all-in-one team collaboration tool that combines note-taking, document sharing, wikis, project management, and much more into one space that's simple, powerful, and beautifully designed. For startups, Notion can provide a full-on operating system for running every aspect of your company, keeping everyone aligned as you grow fast and take on more. It's actually what we use for our podcast team here at the Optimal family, and Notion has helped us tremendously with organizing all our notes and tasks. So, are you interested? Want to find out some more? Well, Notion is running a special offer just for startups. Get up to $1,000 off Notion's team plan by going to notion.com/startups. To give you a sense, that's almost a year of free Notion for a team of 10. Again, that's notion.com/startups to receive up to $1,000 in free credit to use Notion with your team. That's up to a $1,000 value when you go to notion.com/startups. Honesty Makes You Stronger, by Dr. Jeff Cornwall of drjeffcornwall.com. Life in the classroom is different than it was just a few years ago. Students have had it drilled into them that during class discussions, above all else, they must not offend. A study by the Knight Foundation conducted in 2019, found that 68% of college students say that, quote, the campus climate prevents them from expressing their true opinions for fear of offending their classmates, end quote. This new ethic makes open and honest conversations in my classes about business ideas and broader discussions about business-related issues difficult to foster. Cold reality of entrepreneurship. The trend of trying not to offend has made preparing young entrepreneurs for the world of, dare I say it, free enterprise problematic. Markets have no feelings. Customers don't worry about trying to not offend a business when choosing not to do business with it. If a competitor does a better job of meeting the needs of the consumer, that is where consumers will spend their money, period. My job has always been to prepare entrepreneurs for this brutal world. I do this by challenging them to get honest feedback from the market about their idea, by teaching them the tools they need to get information, good and bad, to use to improve their business models. My job then becomes reinforcing the message the market is giving them as I coach and mentor them. I described my role in a blog post that I wrote a dozen years ago. Quote, entrepreneurs always seem to have plenty of cheerleaders. Family and friends are there for encouragement and lifting your spirits. A good mentor is someone who will tell you the truth, even if it hurts. My students and alumni will sometimes refer to being Cornwalled. When they bring their ideas or fledgling businesses to me for advice, my job is to try to find every weak spot, every possible flaw, every vulnerability they face in the competitive market. One student once said to me, Dr. Cornwall, you're such a dream killer. As much as I would love to join the ranks of cheerleaders, I know that my role has to be to help ensure they get their business right and find their way to be able to thrive in the market. End quote. Criticism is not failure. A common reaction that I see from many young entrepreneurs when they're given constructive criticism of their ideas is that they either ignore the information or they give up on their idea. Last semester, I used our family business in an introductory class as an example of the process entrepreneurs go through when pivoting their business models. When we launched our business, the market challenged our assumptions on multiple occasions. Each time, we used the information to pivot our business model to help our business thrive. My intent with this example was to offer a concrete example of the reality of the entrepreneurial journey. Entrepreneurship requires open-mindedness, determination, and persistence. My goal was to encourage and inspire them. For many in that classroom, though, it had the opposite effect. It discouraged and even demoralized many of them. The message we need to offer to this generation is that criticism is not failure, and in many cases, criticism is a critical ingredient for eventual success. All is not lost. What is encouraging to me is that not all of my students are unwilling to hear honest feedback about their ideas. In fact, if approached the right way, many are actually quite receptive. However, I have had to make significant adjustments in my approach to teaching young aspiring entrepreneurs. I've learned to be a bit more measured in how I coach them. Rather than starting off with a blast of honesty, I slowly build to a crescendo of constructive feedback. I have learned to be more patient. I have learned the power of being kind, compassionate, empathetic, and honest. I continue to be very proud of the number of students who are becoming successful entrepreneurs. They understand the importance of listening to the market and seeking constructive feedback from mentors. Most importantly, they are learning to not be offended by honesty. You just listened to the posts titled, Just Because Nobody is Doing It Is Not a Reason to Launch, and Honesty Makes You Stronger, both by Dr. Jeff Cornwall of drjeffcornwall.com. Thank you to Dr. Cornwall. He has spent more than 40 years as a serial entrepreneur and teacher of entrepreneurs. In the 1970s, he started several small businesses and was involved in various family ventures as well. In the late 1980s, following several years in academics, Dr. Cornwall co-founded Atlantic Behavioral Health Systems in Raleigh, North Carolina, and then spent nearly a decade leading the company as president and CEO. After growing to more than 300 employees, he and his partners sold most of their healthcare holdings. After the sale, Dr. Cornwall decided it was time to return to the classroom to share his experience and knowledge with aspiring entrepreneurs. And Dr. Cornwall remains active as an entrepreneur with the digital content venture he founded in 2014 called Entrepreneurial Mind, LLC. Come by drjeffcornwall.com for a lot more, and we really appreciate him sharing his work with us. But that's going to do it for the Monday episode. Hope your week is off to a great start, and I'll be back with you tomorrow, where your optimal life awaits.